Eric, do you want to start with the introductions? We're ready to go here on my side.
Yeah, you just do your introduction, pass it on to me, and I just do a quick one and pass it over to you, and then you go.
Super. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. This is Victor Fis from Parallels. I am the Director of Sales Engineers. And today in our webinar, we also have Eric from the Zenap blog. And Eric, you want to give us some, words here before we can talk about how Parallels can be a good alternative to Citrix?
Yes, sure. So this is Eric from Zenap blog. This is the second webinar I'm doing today. So now it's afternoon, but I also had a European Parallels webinar this morning. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, a little bit early, but it went very well. We had a lot of questions, and we're going to do more talk about my automation stuff. I like to call myself Chief Automation Officer, and I'm going to show you why at the end of the webinar. So please put your questions in the Q&A, and we will address those and other interesting stuff happening in our industry as we speak. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Victor, and he's going to take the presentation and the demo, and then it's going to be interesting what question you have coming up.
Super. Thank you, Eric. So the webinar today, we separated in a couple of parts where we're introducing a little bit more about what our technology can do, especially on how Citrix is being used today. Of course, on the cost side, why you should choose Parallels, and always we showcase different success stories, as well a demonstration on how Parallels remote application works. As Eric mentioned, if you have any questions, you can post them in our Q&A, and we'll be addressing them in the end of the presentation today. So Parallels, a lot of people know about us from Parallels Desktop, which is a hypervisor technology that runs on Macs, allowing users to run Windows or Linux or even Chrome OS. And this market has been very, very successful for us. And almost 3 years ago, we acquired an European technology from a company named called 2X. So the technology has been out in the marketplace for more or less 10 years. And we have been highly successful in the SMB market, service provider market, ISV market, and now we're moving more and more to the enterprise. We also have Parallels Parallels Mac management for Microsoft SCCM. So if you have a lot of Macs in your farms and you want to integrate inventory together, that is another tool that we have in our portfolio. But the biggest focus today, of course, it is, remote application server. We have more than 5 million individuals or more than 50,000 businesses today using Parallels technology. As you can see, we are pretty much in every single vertical, from government, hardware providers, healthcare, education, manufacturing. Of course, education, manufacturing, and healthcare, they are our most successful or popular verticals in the United States. However, again, we are in other technology, in other areas as well. We have been also working with other technology providers of application packaging like Microsoft AppV, Turbo, and Software 2 to increase our penetration, especially in the education business. So if you have Citrix and you're challenged in these areas to reduce your cost and also integrate with other technologies, we can have a side conversation about that as well. What is remote application server? We call it RAS, just to keep it simple. So from what you already know, we are delivering any Windows applications that are running on servers to end users. And those end users can be running Windows, Macs, or mobile platforms with iOS and Android, or sometimes low-cost devices such as Chromebooks or even Raspberry Pis. The idea with Parallels as well is to simplify the access if you're users are on the road. So the concept of mobility, it is very important for us, where we can provide a out-of-the-box HTML5 client. So the same way you would be using Storefront to launch a Citrix application, you can use Parallels HTML5 client or portal to either use client or use HTML5 experience. For the hardware backend, we're compatible pretty much with all kinds of hyperconvergence technology and as well regular servers. So we have partnerships with HPE, we have partnerships with Lenovo, and of course with Nutanix. And with Nutanix, we have worked closely with them to provide integration with Acropolis technology, which is a KVM base. So imagine if you have a use case where using RDSH, which is running on Windows Server technology, and as well VDI. So both use cases are supported, including KVM-based hypervisors. For Microsoft Hyper-V, Zen Server, and as well for vCenter or ESX, we already have those hooks for many years. We have worked with IDC. In fact, this report is from 2016. It has actually, the only thing that have changed is the size of this particular circle, where we increase our presence in the marketplace. We have been selected one of the major players, and we are working in two different big use cases. Of course, we're helping a lot of Citrix customers to reduce their costs, reducing their complexity, delivering a better user experience. On the other side is we're working on RDS customers to make sure you increase security, policy control, and you deliver an elegant and much better HTML5 experience for the end users. So depending how the conversation works, the delivery can be very, very beneficial and or beneficial on the cost side. So it always depends on the use cases you have. Now, the areas we work with our customers, and it is very important to highlight that security is a very important point for us. We are constantly working to provide reporting information, track user activities, and we can lock down client policies from the main console, which means you don't have to go to every single computer, every single individual, and create those policies. And those policies can be controlled by two floats. One of them is related to who this person is in the organization, what is their group in Active Directory, or it could be what kind of device they're using. So, or a combination of both. So you can define that level of granularity. The second part is we have native hooks to connect to two-factor authentication technologies. So if you're using Duo, SafeNet, DeepNet, or other Radius compatible two-factor authentication technologies, we can work with you. We are starting to support, which is coming in our upcoming release in the end of June, Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, and as well Azure Active Directory. On the deployment side, this is where is a huge differentiation for us. We can use, first of all, we can have a pretty much a functional and ready to test Parallels RAS farm in less than 90 minutes. You can download the software, install on top of your Citrix environment, or you can download a virtual appliance that you can run the machine with all of the functional features of RAS, or in fact use our Azure or AWS images or offerings to quickly have a virtual machine up and running. The secret sauce here, it's something that Eric mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, automation. So for deployments and as well extending or managing your farms, you can use PowerShell scripts. And the PowerShell scripts can fully automate a deployment, updates, or changes. Of course, this is for the, if you're looking for, sophisticated automation. But for day-to-day activities, it is one console instead of many consoles. So we, for example, reduce the complexity that you need to have a NetScaler, for example. So it's one console down. Citrix has multiple consoles. Studio, you can have the XenApp console or other features around depending what you have. Two consoles, we use our own console, just a single one. Another advantage into the easy deployment and management is one controller, one console, doesn't matter the term I use, can oversee all possible versions of Windows servers. So in a single farm, you can have the latest and greatest version of Windows Server 2016, although you can have servers running 2012, 2008, or even 2003 Service Pack 1. And if you have Citrix today in different versions of Windows, you might have different farms. And the idea is already too complex. And this is a good point that we can reduce the complexity for you. On the user experience side, we have redesigned our HTML5 to be simple and easy to use in many ways. One, it's able to print, one-click printing, we call it. The second great feature, we support file upload and download, which is a unique feature we provide today. And third, for mobile clients, we have brought our own magnifier, our own keyboard, our own compression and interface to the local machines like iOS and Android to give you easy use for complicated applications that were not designed for mobile platform. So these four areas is very keen for every single deployment. And feature-wise, I think I already spoke about a few of them. So first of all, we're leveraging our DSH, which is the same thing we do with Citrix or VMware or other technologies. VDI, but we also give you the possibility to have remote PCs. And those remote PCs are existing workstations, physical or even virtualized guest operating systems. And instead of using VPN, they can be published as a resource. In fact, this is what I use when I'm on the road, where I use my iPad with a Windows 10 connection in our Azure data center. We support remote FX, which means we work very well with high compression, video streaming, and audio. So H.264, good. We can, if you have that case, we can support that as well. On the cloud readiness, we support on-demand scalability. And in fact, we're introducing a new feature for on-premise customers and Azure customers this summer that depending on the workload you have, and if you have those notifications enabled, you can automatically add new VMs. So we can clone it from a template. In the case of your on-premise data center, we can deploy from the hypervisor. On Azure, we invoked an ARM template using Azure Resource Manager. And if you have hybrid, depending where you want to have the deployment ready or executed, that will be added for you. On HTML5, we already spoke about it. It's completely clientless. You can use the browser to access application, console, and other resources. On the Microsoft PowerShell side, we provide an API, basically, that you can control deployment, licenses, roles, which here in this slide we call it PA. Let me translate it to a language that you know as controller. Gateways is our approach to transform RDP protocol and the ports we use into a single port, 443, and RDS roles. Of course, remote PC and other pieces are integrated to it. Keep in mind, we don't need to have third-party load balancers or even a NetScaler for our deployment. Of course, if you have it, and want to maintain it, no problem, you can keep it. But we come with our own load balancer. So the load balancing approach is no configurations required. We take care for you what configurations are needed. It is resource-based, so the idea is to know how much resources are being used in every single terminal server and gateways to distribute the application as best as possible. Keep in mind, we will not overuse our decals. We can keep the user on the same session with all of their apps open, maximizing your license consumption. So we maximize what you already have instead of adding more. The idea here is to keep it, as lean as possible in terms of costs. And the two-factor authentication we already talked about, but if you have the need for smart cards integration, our Windows and Mac and Linux clients, they support integration with them as well. Universal printing, it's plug and play. It's an out-of-the-box feature. And in fact, by default, it's enabled for all clients, and as well, automatic printing redirection for clients and HTML5 printing comes together. On the client management side, we can use old Windows virtual machines and make them as a kiosk. We replace the Windows UI, if you will, with our own UI, and the users will see the applications and thinking that are running locally. But in reality, those applications will be running remotely. So this is one way for, having a complete lockdown machine if you in public areas of your organization to log in or get other information. And in the client policies, we manage and control it directly from the console based upon on user groups, Active Directory groups, and we can control display settings, connections, or redirections for emergency change, printing, scanning, and local resources includes USB devices, smart cards, or file transfer. So you can control that level of granularity as well. And in the upcoming release, from a client policy perspective, you can white label or rebrand the Windows client. Later this year, most likely we'll be supporting Mac client rebranding as well. In the mobile experience, the application natively works with the iOS or Android experience. But what is very important here, we are enhancing native mobile experience to Windows apps. Excel is one example, but if you have electronic medical records or ERPs that they were not designed for touch experience, we resolve that problem with our magnifier and other controls that we have introduced on those clients. We also include in the mobile world the idea of using a third-party Bluetooth mouse. So you can have an iPad keyboard and a mouse almost like a laptop if you want so. And mobile printing, we're compatible with Android Print and as well with iOS AirPrint capabilities. On the flexibility side, this is where I mentioned about the operating systems the RDSH hosts and remote PCs can run from Server 2003, Service Pack 1, all the way to Windows Server 2016. And we are already working with Microsoft to test remote application server in the upcoming Windows Server technology, which is Windows Server 2019, of course, coming next year. On the remote PC side, from Windows XP all the way to Windows 10. On the hypervisor side, we support pretty much all flavors of hypervisors: Zen Server, VMware, Hyper-V, KVM. So if you don't know KVM, KVM could be Linux KVM, or as well Red Hat, which is a specific or specialized hypervisor technology. All of our components work on this particular platform. And of course, if you're using or adopting Nutanix Acropolis, we're certified with them as well. And if you are in the TSA net group from Nutanix, so are we can address questions there as well. On the hardware certification, HP, Lenovo, and Nutanix are certified. Majority of our customers tend to be on the HP world, either on the hyperconvergence series or even the ProLiant series that has been out there for so many years. With cloud providers, we have great relationship with Microsoft Azure and as well with AWS. We have our offerings today there. And actually, this is a good, easy way to start a proof of concept. You just go to our Azure Marketplace offering. You can try for free for 30 days on the Microsoft side and as well, of course, on the parallel side. So why should you choose us? So there are a few aspects that I wanted to highlight today. One of them is deployment cycles. On Citrix, they tend to be long and complex. In RAS, they are short and easy. A brand new install can be done in 90 minutes. A whole farm upgrade, usually we can do in less than 30 minutes to an hour, depending how big is your complex. We guide you through those upgrades. When we have major release changes, you don't have to build a new farm. You can upgrade your existing farm. Most customers, they create a 1-2 server farm for testing to see if the application has compatibility issues, but for the most part, you can just upgrade. We don't depend on SQL Server database for our software, especially if you're doing database resilience in HA deployments with Citrix. We use our own, and if you have two controllers, they back up each other automatically. And we don't have to go super deep in changing the operating system waiting for Citrix hotfixes. If Microsoft comes with a hotfix, apply it. It will not affect Parallels Remote Application Server. The other part is software maintenance program. You have to pay extra for Citrix. Our pricing model, actually we have two pricing models. One of them is related to be subscription, which is $99 per user per year, which includes every single component of Remote Application Server. You don't have to pay extra for load balancers. Everything is included, which includes technical support, software updates, and maintenance. We are also coming with a premium support if you need super fast response time, if it's a highly critical environment that you cannot have downtimes. So we have a fast track to go to what we call third line support. For service providers or ISVs, we have a SPLA program, which starts more or less with less than $4 per user per month. So I may be talking about $50 to $60 per year per user. But this is more like a utility bill. We look for your subscriptions, consumptions, or peak users per month, and then we send you a bill every month. This is highly popular for ISVs and MSPs because the number of users fluctuate significantly fast. So let's make the math. So for 1,000 users, you can do the math for 500 users. We can have a separate discussion about that. But usually in a Citrix environment, when we move them to Remote Application Server, we have a TCO reduction between 60 to 80%, depending on the version of Citrix you are. Here I'm comparing to the enterprise version. So let me average with all of the Citrix versions like ZNAP Essentials. If you're using the mid-tier and enterprise, the average would go to 66%. Keep in mind the ROI using RAS would come back, with that, with everything, implemented and no more Citrix in your environment in more or less 4 to 5 months. So it's actually pretty fast. If we compare with Horizon, this change here goes to the similar level. And in Horizon's deployments, depending how much you have or what kind of components are used, that goes as well to between 60 to 80%. So how do you replace it? How fast it can happen? Well, very easy. You install RAS in your farm, and you can choose between a download to your existing data center. You could use our trial in a box, which is a VM appliance that you can attach to your network, or you can run independently in your network. Or you can use our Azure. If you have Azure Cloud or AWS Cloud, or even hybrid, if you have a VPN between Azure and your data center. So once you install it, we push our session host agent to your Citrix farm, and you publish your applications or desktop, and give a link to the users. And I'll show you in a little bit how that works in the presentation level for users. So this entire process here takes less than 90 minutes. So it is super quick to have a working environment for your customer base for trying or use it. So it's super easy to work with us. We also have a group of sales engineers that can assist you in a proof of concept, deploying best practices, playing with your applications, or even addressing sizing questions. And on the case study side, I have a few here. First one, it's called TSG Networks. We replace XenApp here, you can see here in the bottom. And they're using for Microsoft Office and a few customized or homegrown applications. And they mentioned, look, we reduced their cost, we created a better and stable environment for them to manage and use. In this deployment, we have a few hundred users in. The second one, it's current behavioral health and recovery services. Also, we replace Citrix, and in this case, it is a little bit more complicated deployment where they are using Cerner and EMR apps, which is sometimes, too many points to look at. But the idea here is simple UI to manage. It was better performance. In fact, we reduced the login time of the applications and profile loading because we're using a simplified and better managed profiles for users. And we corrected their bottlenecks related to network because we were using fewer servers in the deployment. One controller, TS agents, and 2 gateways. No need to have a NetScaler, no need to have a SQL Server. Plus, the time frame to maintain and do the upgrades for them. So with that being said, please, if you have questions, post them in our chat window or Q&A section. We'll be addressing after the demo. So let me switch from my slide deck and let me share my screen. So first thing here, let me enable my presentation mode. And here in the computer, let me just make this a little bit bigger. And let me start with our HTML5 experience. So HTML, it is what would you see as an equivalent to your Citrix storefront or web UI. So the idea is, of course, once you log in, is a secure connection. You have your own certificates. What we do here, very importantly, is we integrate with your Active Directory. You can add your URLs. You can customize the way and look and feel you want. And for client distribution, you can use our client link where you can download, or similar to Citrix, download it and start using, and the web front end will be sending the instructions for the client, or you can do a manual configuration of the client. So once you're in and you're logged in, Depending on your user profile, you have access to the apps. I have admin access here, so I can see all sorts of applications and desktops. We have this taskbar here on the right side where you can do copy and paste. We can use file upload and file download. And in the bottom here, we mimic a workspace where you can see that I have already the console already open here. So let's say I want to open, for example, in the Victor apps, I can open, for example, in my East Coast data center, Microsoft Office. So if I double click, it opens the client. If I right click, I can choose to use native client approach or HTML5. So opening HTML5, we instantly see here that I already have an Excel opened. Let me open, for example, this Excel file. And I can, like I said, I can just toggle from one app to another. If I have more apps open or different spreadsheets open, for example, let me open this project tracker. I'll create a file. Once I minimize this one, instead of having the X, you can toggle from one app to another. It is pretty much like a desktop. So let's say my planner is done. I wanted to print it. So if I want to say print, we will point to my HTML5 universal printer and click print. What happens next is a dialog like printing a web page, like a boarding pass or you know, something that, or a document that you have or such. So the dialog here is using, you know, the native printing capabilities. So this makes the printing process easy. Now, if I want to upload a file, I can just click here on the upload button. It opens a dialog asking, what do I want to do? So let's say I want to upload, let me see here, my insurance card. So I can just click on File, Upload. We will pick the location you want to save. Can be either on my profile, which we're using user profile disks from Microsoft, or local storage on the server. You pick it. Once I click on Save, now the file has been uploaded. And of course, I could attach it or open using Explorer to this particular document. So you can do, you know, that in a very, very easy way. Now, in a lot of use cases that we migrate customers from Citrix to Parallels RAS, they like to use this particular UI to just call the client. So if I double click in Microsoft Word, it will invoke the client like you would see in Citrix Receiver, and it will open my session here. So we're opening the profile, and this is now Microsoft Word now working side by side with my other apps on my Mac. The biggest difference here, of course, is local file access, and of course compression, or you want to have like a more seamless integration with printing. So here I can see all of the printers that I have already mapped that are coming from my MacBook Pro. And the way how the printers are named, it's actually up to you to control it and use it. So you can, you know, change the names and the way you manage it. Now, from a management perspective, before I show you the mobile experience, you can, like I mentioned, everything is done in a single console. We provide you wizards to add existing terminal servers or RD session hosts to push the agent. So the wizard asks you the server that you want to add, and we'll push the roles and settings for you. We can do applications, or we can invite users. And what is very important here in this particular UI, at any moment you can come to your farm and you can see in a single pane of glass how each component is performing in my farm. So on the publishing side, which is a very interesting point, we can scan different server groups or a specific server for a specific application, and we can either pick what is in the start program group, or you can use, regular settings for that matter. So let's say I want to publish Firefox. Once the publishing process is done, it's added automatically here into the publishing group. I can move them, add them here to my group of applications. It will follow the filtering rules that I added just a specific user, or you could use a domain group, or a combination of user client gateways. So if you have like internet gateways or local network gateways, you can set if the application will be visible or not. Now, on the customization side of the app, it is, we have much more, options here. You can change at any time if the application, where the application will be running. That means you can verify if they're installed on all of your servers. You can set application behavior, automatically start, you can change the logos, or create shortcuts based upon global rules, or create one by default that once the client starts, add on the desktop or in the computer, or the local computer start folder. And on the licensing side, if the app has limitations related to how many concurrent licenses it can run, you can set flags or restrictions. And those flags or restrictions can be based upon warning user, notify administrators, or define not to run. And at any time, you can see where or how many users are running this, app. Right now, nobody's using this one because I just published. The application process to publish, as soon as you click on the apply button, where we're saving that information in the database, it reflects automatically into the portal, as long as you click on the refresh button. So here in the Victor apps, Firefox appeared over here. So that's the simplicity side. For mobile customers or iOS users, where applications have very tricky keystrokes, combining like Control, Option, to do certain features or shortcuts, we created what we call Quick Keypad. And the idea here is to be simple as possible to create the shortcuts you want, and then you can link them to whatever application you want. And the same approach is used for universal printing, which, by the way, starts by default, and scanning using WIA or Twain protocols. So the approach here, again, it's to keep the UI as simple as possible. On the connection side, we can do a few things here. We can use multiple domains, single domains, or trusted domains. You can use two-factor authentication using multiple brokers. In this particular farm, for example, I have Radius up and running. So I have Radius running this particular tool using dual two-factor authentication. And for policy control, you can have different policies based on a specific user or user groups, or for all users. And pretty much you can control, for example, how the connection name will be used, the display settings for them, if you're using printing, scanning, experience, here for example, how the look and feel would be available, or how universal printing and compression will be used. Now, on one policy actually that it's turned off, we can come here to the properties, enable local resources, and say if audio redirection will be available, clipboard, disk drives, USB devices, serial ports, which you still see once in a while, or even file transfer. On the option side, we have single sign-on, which works on the client and very, very soon on the console if you have them on the domain. And we have settings to automatically adequate to high definition displays like Mac, Surface Books, or other devices that required high resolution. So you don't have to tell users change those settings. You can do them from here. And in case you need to do an emergency reroute from one gateway to another, you can actually use what we call policy reconnection redirection. that will reroute the gateway slash HTML5 traffic to your backup if you have one. In most cases, people use two gateways or multiple gateways, but this is a way maybe to go to another farm, which is also compatible. And we provide free monitoring tool which generate data about session information, resources usage on all server components. And if you want to track how your users are accessing a remote application server, we can look, for example, my user. You can go for a specific time frame, and here we can track, for example, for how many times I had sessions open. This one was open very shortly, but this one was 2 hours, 2 minutes. We can see idle time, disconnect time, and such. What applications user tried, it's also available where we can get a chart from the last week where we can see apps, how many times were triggered. So that information in this case uses SQL Server Express with advanced features only for that matter. Configurations, again, we use our own way to do it. So from the UI, we talk about HTML5, I showed you a little bit the client and of course the admin console. Let me switch a little bit now to our iOS experience. So here let me just go to QuickTime very quickly, and let me share my iPad. So this will load in a few seconds. It's connecting to the iPad now. Okay, let me maximize. And here on the bottom, we have the Parallels client. So I can open the Parallels client. We support here a very good feature, Touch ID or Face ID for the new iPhones. And this is actually reconnecting to my desktop that was already opened. So here is a Windows 10 desktop that I have it running on my Azure farm. I have the bar here, which we can see in the settings. We can use additional keys, which is like a touch bar, if you will. We can use microphone redirection, printing settings. And if you don't know how to use the client, you can always click on the help here. And in the tutorial, it shows us which buttons do what or which interaction works for the users. But what I like to highlight, and here it doesn't matter what application you use, if it's published app, VDI, or remote PC, it's the ability to use the magnifier and other features we provide. So with Microsoft Excel opening here, I will create just a spreadsheet like we had before. So let me just say open a blank image. I'll maximize it. And if I say here, hi there, and I want to click exactly on this particular button corner, which is very hard to do in an iPad, we can tap and hold and we precisely detect what this particular function can do. So I can drag down, it copied. We integrate with native Apple features like copy and paste, select on, and if we do more, it's like a right-click feature. If I tap with 2 fingers, it also gives you the same option. But what is very cool here, if I just click on hi there, they'll both use a right-click, and I click here on the ladder, I can use the cursor or move it, and once I wait, it will go to the drop down, and I can, for example, pick a precise color that I want, and then that will be changed. The same way happens if I want to do printing. And if I send to the printer, this will be looking for the printers that I have available in my particular session. So here we have, for example, different printers that are available on my device. I can send it to the printer, and that will be natively integrating with AirPrint. You already picked my printer on my network, and then I can just send the output out. Now, if I want to switch to application published, like we had with Excel and other apps, we click here on this particular button here to see my sessions, or just close it to go back. But the idea here is to provide a similar experience with the app launcher. And the app launcher gives you a very similar output as we see from the HTML5 or native clients. And let's say I want to open here in Microsoft Office, I want to do Excel one more time. So now we're launching another session, which is connected to our RDSH farm. And this is Windows Server 2016. And we're logging the session. And then let's see Excel coming in a moment. So this is the session we had in our other desktop. Here's the Excel. And if I go here to my planner one more time, I'll create a file. And now using additional keys, we can play around using the shortcuts I created. Home, up, down, or other apps that I have. And the same features we had about printing on desktops is available, of course, here. So I can use the iPad printer 22, send it to the printer, the same way happens. We don't advertise much. One of the options, which is use HTML5 in the browser. And if you need to take, the reason I'm mentioning today is if you need to use camera interaction, which the client doesn't provide today, you can use in the HTML5 experience. So in a nutshell, due to the time we have today, from the presentation showing you how HTML5, the iOS and native client works, and of course the administration side, I wanted to pause over here, and then we could go to a Q&A session. Let's see. Eric, anything you want to add before, if we have any questions from the audience today?
Not right now. I got some private messages. If we could go to the upcoming roadmap for the next release.
Yes, that's a good point. So in the next release, which is coming in end of June, more or less, we're adding a few great new features, which are what we called RDSH server template. So for scaling capabilities, the idea is to add new machines to your farms automatically based upon a workload. We have redesigned our console, where you can now see resources in real time, including gateway metrics, among automatic notifications. And one of the things we're adding in version 16.5 that is very important for about our customer base, it was a very interesting request. It's the ability to support Pixelbooks, and we actually added to the roadmap. And we have completely redesigned our VDI framework. So for existing Parallels remote application servers, customers, what we have done over time was the need of an appliance for your VDI farms. With version 16.5, it's going to be 100% API driven. And that approach, it will scale up much faster and simpler how the VDI framework works. For service providers and ISVs, we will add additional new features on the white labeling, the portal that I showed you, which had Parallels logo and the red color from Parallels, can be changed to a little bit deeper than what we provide today, like automatically sizing the logos and such. What is very important on the white labeling is the ability now, or very soon, to white label Windows clients. And actually, we cannot do it right now on the Mac client because our client runs is available from the Apple Store. We are discontinuing the client from the App Store we'll be using pretty much our own download, which we will be able to do what we call coherence mode or side-by-side apps inside of folders, and the ability to white label the Mac client as well. And there are other improvements that we have been doing, which is called standby mode, that you can have several publishing agents or controllers. And today, the way we work in the active-active mode, we distribute the load between them, like who talks to who and signaling and such. With the standby feature, all of the connections can be limited to one controller, and if it fails, it will automatically move to the hot standby device. So it's just decreasing a little bit network traffic and making the failover working the same way, but just saving some resources. Another and last feature, which is very important related to printing, we're redesigning our printing drivers to optimize performance and offload a little bit what we call the window spooler. We noticed that in very heavy workloads, the window spooler can be a little bit tricky here and there. So the idea is to decrease the load, optimize the performance, and deliver to clients. And we have introduced in the current version of RAS API hooks for our clients and as well for the HTML5. We're adding a couple more components there, especially with the partnership we have been working with Software 2. And finally, we're optimizing the client printing performance over WAN, which works pretty well today in compression, but we wanted to go one step beyond that. So pretty much from a roadmap and changes coming in the upcoming release, which is we're in the beta program now, that's what I can share today.
Excellent. And we also have a new thing coming, hopefully at the same time as the new release. Application or PowerShell, I don't know what's coming up, but the possibility to migrate off Citrix and basically just uninstalling what's already there and publishing the application automatically for you. Another cool thing that I like with Parallel's solution is the agent is really small. The download is 100 megs. And you use that same for the console, for the gateway, whatever you're setting up. You don't need to download a 3 gig ISO file just to get started with the basic stuff. And as you all know, RDS out of the box is a pain in the ass. It's no good, so you need something. You need
True.
Parallels to put on top of that. Another thing that a lot of people don't know or is aware of is that the Parallels, they do support earlier versions. Now, it's not recommended to keep running on Windows 2008 R2 because it's end of life by Microsoft, but they do support the possibility to use their agent on older system as well. And as you know, the Citrix Synapse 6.5 is now soon end of life, so it's a big opportunity, especially for the small customers, to just uninstall the Citrix stuff, add Parallels agent, and you are up and running. Another cool thing that I like is that Parallel have support for Microsoft user profile disk. So when you do a plain RDS solution, you have UPD supported by Microsoft, but it's not supported out of the box just by using the APIs, but Parallels do support that. And this is becoming more and more important now, as we saw now with Windows 10 18.03 that was released just 2 days ago. Microsoft will no longer support roaming of app data. Now, you shouldn't do that in the first place, but there's a lot of people still doing it. And now with that going away and the fact that UPD do that. And this is very important because as you might know, Skype for Business is now going to be Teams in the future, and Teams, they install themselves in app data for each and every user. So you need to have something to solve that. I just dropped a link in the chat window there to courses.uctraining.com. this is very helpful if you want to spin up a POC on-prem or in your home lab or wherever. And basically, it uses some part of my automation framework to spin up the POC, and you don't have to download anything except from the framework itself, because if you don't have the source files, it will automatically go out and download Parallels. It will download Chrome, Office 365, Firefox, Adobe Reader, and so on and so on. So by using the automation framework Community Edition, you will be up and running in an hour or two, depending on your hardware. And we are, of course, using the PowerShell SDK. So when the solution is up and running, you just run the PowerShell script, and that will automatically publish some applications, set up the gateway, use SSL certificate, and apply your license as well. And this is even more important now with the next release coming out in the summer, 16.5, because now Parallels will support what we call in the Citrix world master images. So we can use a template and use that for further images. And it's very important that you have a consistent way of building your master images, and you can do that with my automation framework. And there is also, I think it's 8 or 10 training videos. So it's not just the automation framework by itself, but you also have training videos for Citrix, Microsoft Nutanix, and Parallels. And VMware Horizon View is coming. I highly recommend for those of you working in the consulting industry or ISP to use something like the free automation framework Community Edition to spin up a POC. So instead of telling the customers you need to have Parallels, or you need to have VMware, or you need to have Citrix, or whatever, give the customer a POC of the 3 major players, which is or 4 if you want to include Microsoft as well, and let the customer decide. Let the customer try it out. Let the customer decide based upon price, user experience, and the features that they require, and then go from there and select the right solution for themselves. So that's what I have to share with you today. So make sure to download this straight from Parallel site, or go to my free course there and try out the automation framework. Victor?
All right. So thank you, Eric, so much for the input as well. And as we mentioned, the session was recorded, and I will be sharing with you all. And if there are more questions, please come to our website, parallels.com, and we're more than happy to work with you. Thank you so much.
So thank you, everyone, for spending your time with us today, and have a nice day for the rest of the day, and a great weekend. See you around. Bye-bye.